The night story. Years ago, there was a time when night truly meant something. Not like now, when day and night blur together in the glow of our phones and screens. Back then, night had darkness, it had silence, it had a sky so wide and deep you could almost fall into it. We didn't have electricity 24 hours a day. Sometimes, right in the middle of a radio program or a TV show, the lights would suddenly go out and the whole house would sink into darkness. But that darkness wasn't frightening to us. It was the signal. Story time had begun. In the hot, endless summers, we used to sleep on the rooftop. The night breeze carried the smell of dust and jasmine. Crickets sang from somewhere far away, and above us, the sky spilled over with stars. Even now, when I remember those nights, it feels like the Milky Way belonged only to my childhood. It was so close that I thought if I stretched out my hand, I could pick a few stars and tuck them into my little sister's hair. Winters were different. Cold winds howled through the cracks of the old windows, and to save on fuel, we all slept on. We all slept in one special room. We called it the Zemestane, the winter room. It was where warmth lived, where laughter, breath, and stories blended into a single rhythm. My grandfather would clear his throat, lean a little closer to the lantern's flickering light, and begin one of his gapesho tales. Stories not from books, but from memory, from life. We called those storytelling sessions gapesho, meaning night talk. Tales passed from one generation to another. Stories of forgotten heroes, of fairies and demons, of love that waited a lifetime, and wisdom hidden inside ordinary events. Grandfather's voice was calm, full of mystery. Sometimes in the middle of a story, he'd fall silent, staring into the flame, and in that silence we heard more meaning than in any words. Now, when I think about it, those pauses may have been more powerful than the stories themselves. We didn't know it then, but those nights were shaping us. They were planting seeds inside us, seeds of imagination, of connection, of listening. Our grandparents were, in a way, the content creators of their time. No cameras, no internet, no followers, and yet their words reached across generations. Years passed, we grew up, the lights stayed on all the time. The night lost its darkness, lost its silence, even the stars disappeared. Now each of us lives in our own glowing square of light, scrolling through endless noise. But sometimes, in the middle of this digital life, a memory drifts in, like the smell of fresh bread from far away, and my heart fills with longing. A few weeks ago, I saw a video on YouTube. It was an older man, maybe 63, with gray hair and gentle eyes. He said he had worked in a film studio until he was 57, an editor, passionate about his job. But one day, suddenly it was over. They told him, "We don't need you anymore." Imagine that. 57 years old. You have spent your life walking one path, and in a single sentence it ends. But he didn't give up. He said, "What saved me was my experience. The same editing skills he had used for others, he now used for himself." He started a YouTube channel, small at first, sharing what he knew, speaking honestly about life after 50. Gradually, people found him. Money came in again, but more importantly, purpose came back. As I watched him talk, smiling into the camera with quiet confidence, I suddenly thought of my grandfather. It hit me. This man was a modern version of him. He too was telling his Gappy show, only this time not under the stars but on a glowing screen, not to a handful of kids but to thousands of people around the world. Maybe modern grandfathers are returning to their old role, just in a new form, not with a kerosene lamp, but with a ring light, not with a circle of sleepy grandchildren, but with a circle of subscribers. But the essence is the same. Wisdom turned into story, a story turned into light, and light passed on to others. In this world of speed and scrolling, maybe we need stories more than ever. Not fairy tales of kings and monsters, but true stories of people who failed, got up again, and learned something worth sharing. People who, with kind eyes, say, I have been there too. When I thought about that American grandfather, I realized something. No matter where we live or what language we speak, we all want the same thing: to be seen, to be heard, to be useful. My grandfather's stories gave meaning to his evenings. This man's videos give meaning to his mornings. And maybe this story I am telling you now is my own way of continuing their line, keeping that light alive. Sometimes I wonder, if my grandfather were alive today and if he knew how to use a smartphone, he'd definitely have a YouTube channel. He'd probably call it Grandpa's Gap Show, and every night he'd tell one of his old stories. And I'm sure thousands of people from every corner of the world would listen to his calm voice and find peace. Because honesty is universal. Wisdom doesn't need translation. When someone speaks from the heart, people everywhere understand. What touches me most is how the world can change completely, and yet human needs don't change. Back then, children gathered around their elders to listen. Today, people gather around screens for the same reason. Beneath all the noise, one thing remains. We still crave voices that speak of life, of experience, of love. When I think of those rooftop nights, the cool breeze, the faint sound of most call, my grandfather's voice saying, "Once upon a time there was a man," I realized those weren't just memories. They were foundation. They taught me that the world is more than what we see, that every story, every person has hidden layers. And now, when I sit in front of a camera to speak, I feel like I am carrying that same tradition forward. The tradition of telling stories under the infinite sky. Maybe technology has widened the distance between us, but if we look closely, it is also giving us a chance, a new way to connect, to speak, to listen. In a world obsessed with speed, storytelling is an act of slowing down. It's a pause, a deep breath. And that's something our grandparents understood well. Sometimes, late at night, when I can't sleep, I step outside and look at the sky. It's not as bright with stars anymore, but the feeling of those childhood nights still lives in me. And I imagine my grandfather up there somewhere, still telling stories. Maybe he's entertaining the angels above now, telling them how his grandchild finally learned to tell stories too, only this time in a world full of lights and noise. And I smile, because now I know stories never really end. They just change shape. Once they were told by the firelight, now they shine through a camera lens, but their purpose is the same: to teach, to comfort, to keep humanity alive. I still miss those nights, the cool rooftop, my grandfather's voice, the silence that had meaning. But when I think of that 63-year-old man smiling into his camera, I realize maybe the world isn't so different after all. The tools have changed, but the hearts haven't. Hearts still long to share, to be heard, to connect. And now, more than ever, I believe it's never too late to tell your story. Because every story that comes from the heart will find another heart to live in. And maybe that's the secret to being human. Perhaps someday, years from now, my own grandchild or yours will stumble upon this video somewhere deep in the internet. They'll smile and say, "That's the one who always talked about the old Capriccio nights." And maybe at that very moment, in a small heart somewhere, another seed of wonder and kindness will be planted, and the story will go on.